Hello, my research dragons. Hope you're doing well, staying healthy and safe. So welcome to week 5. I'm still grading week 4. It's a slow go because we did have some storms blow through and I lost internet. And I want to make sure that everybody is on the right track. So I'm being very cautious and going over every detail in your stuff. I've done half of them, so some of you have your grades and some of you are still waiting. So I apologize for that. But I'm hoping to get that done relatively quickly. I did notice in the ones that have done it that there is still some confusion out there about independent variables and dependent variables and empirical realizations. So when I looked at the book, and some of you have kind of like summarized what's in the book, I can see where the confusion is, because to me the book really does obfuscate the definitions, and it makes it harder than it actually is. So I just want you to remember that your independent variables are categories, things that you're comparing. It's nothing more than that, no matter what the fancy language is in the book. It's just what you're comparing. Male or female. I'm trying to think of some of the projects that you guys are doing. Male sex offenders to female sex offenders. Officers with body cams and officers without body cams. African Americans to Caucasian in terms of prison sentencing. Things like that. That's what you're comparing, and that's your independent variable. So in your project, when you mention what are my independent variables, remember, go broad. So even though you have in your mind, let's say, to do African American and Caucasians, your independent variable is race. Your empirical realization of race, or how you're defining race, are the groups you're going to use in your study. African Americans, Caucasians. So if you're doing the body cam study, one of you guys are doing that study, your independent variable would be police status, and it would be with or without body cams. Or in the case, I think in the paper they say before or after body cams, and they're going to look at crime rate. Okay? In terms of male versus female sex offenders, your independent variable is gender. Okay? Gender of sex offender. And your empirical realization would be male or female sex offender. So independent variable is broad. Empirical realization of that independent variable is narrower. Same thing true with your dependent variable. So if your dependent variable is, let's say you're looking at sentencing for African American offenders versus Caucasian offenders. So your independent variable is race. Your empirical realization is African American versus Caucasian offenders. And then for dependent variable, you're going to look at punishment. And your empirical realization of punishment could be what exactly was the sentence, okay, the severity of the sentence, okay? You could also have another empirical realization if you have two dependent variables, like looking at numbers, actual numbers of people, like how many African Americans versus how many Caucasian American offenders. Okay, so broad to narrow. Okay, so if you think of all of research as a double-sided funnel, if you take two funnels and put them on top and they're joined by the narrow ends, everything starts out broadly: your theory, your hypotheses, your independent variables, your empirical realization, and then your methods. Okay, and then you're going to reduce everything down to numbers. Okay, you're going to get numbers from your data. And after you get numbers from your data, you're going to analyze your data, and it's going to start going back again. Okay, you're going to start getting numbers. You're going to look at what the numbers mean. You're going to make generalizations. So that's what you're looking for in your research. So there you go. Remember I told you last time that the secret weapon is the empirical realization. So I'm going to tell you a funny story of what happened last night in my house, and it gives you an idea about research, okay? So I'm sitting there watching TV, and I'm online posting to you guys, and I'm watching Ad Astra. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Anyway, Brad Pitt's on there, and he's in his spaceship, and it's really spooky, and the music is becoming ominous, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, now is the time when the monster's going to come out and scare everybody in the audience. Well, just when that music was getting really scary, a bird pops out, and starts flying around in my living room. So I start screaming naturally, and everyone in my family starts screaming. And only it's not a bird, it's a bat. Okay, it's a bat. So I run out to the garage because I'm going to get a fishing net and I'm going to try and catch this stupid bat. And all the while I'm thinking, wow, there could be some research in this. Where did the bat come from? Why did they confuse coming into a house? What is there to drive them away? I'm thinking all these research things, of course, instead of catch the bat, right? Anyway, so everyone in my family decided that I should be the one to catch the bat because, after all, I am a Girl Scout leader. And I'm thinking, what the heck? Just because I'm a Girl Scout leader doesn't mean I can catch bats. And then all the people I talked to after the incident last night said, well, that shouldn't be a problem for you. You're always in the outdoors and you're a Girl Scout leader. And I'm sitting there thinking, what the heck? What do you mean I'm a Girl Scout leader? So what? What does that have to do with catching bats? Well, apparently that's a thing. So I'm thinking, wow, I could compare status, Girl Scout leader versus not Girl Scout leader, okay? And then my dependent measure could be attitude of capability, okay? Do people really think that Girl Scout leaders have some ability to deal better with crazy wild animals in the house or just crazy wild animals in general? So right there is a little study, right? Just based on something stupid that happened. I mean, in the meantime, the bat, I think, is still in the house. I don't know. I couldn't catch it. If anybody comes over here and catches it, I will give you extra credit. I don't know. The window is open. It's right there. The window is wide open, and I'm hoping that it just goes out the window. So another thing that is important, another kind of study, I was watching all the stuff that's happening with, Black Lives Matter and all this other stuff, and I'm really good friends with the Black Lives Matter director in Toledo, and he always comes and he talks to classes and stuff like that. He's a great guy, and there's this thing that's going around that says defund the police, defund the police. And there's people that are really opposed to it, and there are people who are really in favor of it. And there's this vitriol on both sides. And so I was talking to my friend in Toledo, and then I also talked to a friend of his who he runs a Poor People's Initiative in Los Angeles. So I gave him a call, and I was like, you really should use a better empirical realization of the word defund, because it's confusing to people, it's confusing to the public, and it's causing animosity on both sides, and you want to really make that clearer. So I had a great conversation with him. We talked about the importance of specificity in the words that we're using, and it seems like they're both talking about the same thing, but they're using two different words with two very different connotations. So like if you say defund, a lot of people will say, well, we can't have no police. We can't take money away from police. Police are doing blah, blah, blah. And on the other side, they're saying, a lot of times police are doing things that they get stuck with, like being mental health counselors or something like that. And if we had more money for services for that, then police wouldn't get stuck with those jobs. So they're both talking about the same thing, but the word that they're using is not a good one. That's why I said empirical realization is the secret weapon of research. So there has to be some kind of agreement on that empirical realization before we can move forward. And meanwhile, using the word defund without specificity really does mess things up. So the guy with the Poor People's Initiative in Los Angeles was on MSNBC, and he was talking about that very issue. So I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And it's not that we haven't had this idea going around for a long time. The whole idea of restorative justice, upon which the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections uses as well. This is a really big thing, even in Ohio and Massachusetts, Minnesota, a lot of the states with that type of rehabilitation component in their correctional system use the same idea. They just don't say defund. They say a different word. So it's all in the empirical realization. So just about 10 minutes ago, I was listening to the Canadian Prime Minister address Canada, because in my heart and soul, I am Canadian. not in reality, but in my heart and soul, I'm Canadian. My favorite hat here, there's words written on it, embroidered on it, that says True North, Strong and Free, which is part of the Canadian National Anthem. And I'm wearing my University of Montreal t-shirt all the time. So I was set to do some research in the Arctic later on in mid to late July. And the border is not open yet, so I'm anxiously awaiting to see whether or not my research is going to happen. Okay? So there was this thing where Prime Minister Trudeau was at a press conference, and he was asked, what did he think about what was happening in the United States with all the race riots and all the issues with Black Lives Matter and things like that. And it's a very awkward response that he made. He literally sat at the podium for quite a while. Like he really didn't know what to say because he didn't really want to come out and criticize President Trump. He was trying to be really careful and really political. And after a very uncomfortable length of time, he said something like, we have been watching, horrified, what's happening in the United States, but I just want to remind everyone that racism is real and it exists in Canada as well. And he started talking about the instances of racial discrimination and things that are happening in Canada. And just yesterday, I guess, there was an incident that's causing a lot of issues in Canada where the leader of the Athaide-Victor Indigenous group in Alberta was arrested outside a casino, and there was a dash cam because all Canadian cars have dash cams. They don't have, cameras on them specifically, but they do have it at the dash cam. And it looked like it was an excessive use of force, and he's playing the video and all this other stuff, and they're talking about it. And that's not an isolated incident, okay? Because there was an incident in Nunavut, which is a territory in Canada, northern Canada, where an RCMP vehicle opened its door and ran into a First Nations person as well. And so there's been these incidents that happen all over Canada as well, and now they're talking about it. And he wants to do reforms to the RCMP, which is Canada's police, except for Ontario and Quebec. So it's something that's very interesting. So his response was really cool and just begging for research, right? And he's talking about making cameras on the police, that police would wear, mandatory, all over Canada. So for my one student who's doing that research, there you go. You could compare United States and Canada later on down the line when you go for your doctorate. But this is what I mean. You can get good research out of just anything that happens. Just any kind of incident that happens, any kind of everyday thing like bats flying in your house. Everything can inspire research, and you just have to see it, and you'll have tools to recognize it. And, if you get an idea to do research, or if you want to go to a conference, or if you're going for your doctorate, or if you decide to do a master's thesis, or whatever it is, you can always call me and say, hey, I need some help with this, and I'll be glad to help you. Or at work, at work you go, hey, we're trying to get funding for this program, and I need to convince the board of directors that this is a worthwhile program. How can I make my presentation sexy and display the research? And I'll be happy to help you, okay? So anyway, that's week 5. I will get to your week 4 papers for those of you who haven't received your grade. Also, I put week 5 assignment at the bottom of week 5 in a Word doc, and so do that one instead of the ones that are up there, and you should be good to go. So have a great week. If you have any questions or comments, give me a call, give me a text, and remember, it's a great day to be a dragon. Wish me luck with my bat.